Welcome back to the I Did It First podcast. I'm Anna.
And I'm Riley, and we are here with our producer, Kenny. Kenny, say what's up.
Hey, what's up? How you guys doing?
So wanted to kind of go back to the first episode where we told you what caused this whole podcast to come to fruition. And I really wanted to mention why, the purpose of it for me. Mm-hmm. And I think you also, and you might have more to say, but a big part of that is I want you to know me as a person, and not just as your mom, just as a super flawed human that's made lots of mistakes and made me who I am. And I think that's a truth so many of us as adult children have a hard time kind of reckoning with. I know I did with my own parents. And as you learn more about them older, it's honestly a huge shock.
Yeah.
And I think I've tried pretty hard to shock you early.
You have.
And frequently that you actually can see me and see my emotions and see the shit that I go through. And it's not just
unwarranted. Like, you're allowed to have feelings because
totally.
You're a person. You're not supposed to be.
And I do have my own things going on. It's not just being a mom. And, you know, I made that reference before. It's like seeing, you know, the shock of when you see your teacher out of school in normal clothes and you just freak out because you forget that they're also just this person. I relate it to that. Yeah. And so part of me evolving that and nurturing that relationship and that knowledge with you is kind of what brought us to our subject for today's show. And highlighting all the mistakes that I've made, which I necessarily wouldn't do them over. Maybe, I might treat them a little different, tweak it a little. But there is so much that I feel like I want to share with you. And that's kind of this list that, you know, it's advice of what I would have done in my 20s or how I would have handled things differently. Had I, you know, a little insight or knowledge or maybe a better relationship guidance with my own mom at the time. I want to try and do that for you. And I might still get it wrong. So just, again, that's part of my truth and my reality. I might tell you this and you might go, you were wrong. But and it's my first time too, just in case you forgot. Yes, it's your first time
doing live too.
Yeah.
So listener, my mom and I came up collectively with 13 concepts. Yep. Pretty much. These are 13, lucky number 13 rules to live by. And some of them may seem very straightforward, but I think it's important to be reminded and kind of just it will help open conversation with you and other people in your life and maybe just change and alter the way that you think.
Hopefully.
And I'm also speaking to myself.
And some are pretty simple, but when you start to wrap your head around it, you might see how it's really affected you. I mean, I know even just making this list, like I would started to dwell on certain things. Like, I'll just jump right into it. Like the first one, nobody cares. Even as we're making this, like I really kind of thought about how much time I've spent and wasted worrying about what someone else thought or what their opinion might be about something I did or wanted to do. I mean, and I use tattoos as an example. I wanted to get tattoos early on, and keep in mind, this is like early 2000s. So it's definitely, it was different. Maybe not that, but it was different than it's widely accepted now.
Yes.
But even at that time, like my concern for what my mom would think, what my friends would, it was all consuming. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't till just a few years ago that I started to get them. And the same people that I was so worried about, they probably looked for like 3 seconds and was like, oh, okay, cool. And I sweated this. When I say sweated this, like it was real. The anxiety was real.
Yes.
And it was so irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it literally goes even the number one thing I think of when you say nobody cares, because you're always like, nobody cares, David.
Yeah.
Like from Schitt's Creek. That's always your go-to. Line. But it's true. Like you go to the beach and you're so worried about, oh my gosh, like how do I look? I'm wearing a bikini. All these things because you're concerned with how you're perceived by other people. But the truth is everyone else is also concerned with how they're perceived by other people.
Yep.
I cannot tell you a single body that I've seen at the beach that I have kept locked up in my noggin, like, at all. I can't.
Like, oh my gosh.
No.
And even that person that's you probably thought was ideal for whatever you think ideal was probably so consumed as well.
I'm sure there's always things. Yeah. And that kind of transitions into our second point, being that nothing is embarrassing if you own it. And I think that people always feel compelled to kind of offer explanation as to why they're doing things. And the truth is, if it brings you joy, it does not have to make sense to anybody else. If it fills your bucket, you don't need to be concerned with what other people are thinking. Granted, don't go do drugs. Like, that's not, don't take what I just said and run with that. Yeah. But I'm saying, like, if there are things that other people think are cheesy or corny or whatever, but it makes you fucking happy, do it.
Do it.
Do it. Nothing's embarrassing. There's so many times, and I think more so recently than ever, we were at a coffee shop. This story is so funny. And my mom slides out of the seat, but she assumed that the bench was a little longer than it was. So she kept sliding, and her momentum carried her from the bench to the floor. And I mean, she completely spilled her coffee all over her, and we were crying, laughing in this busy coffee shop. And then the truth is too, when shit like that even happens, if you laugh at it, then it's like, yeah, you're just owning it.
Like, I sat in it for a minute. I realized for a moment I was actually super worried. I'm like, everyone's going to turn around. Turns out no one was even looking. Like
maybe
no one
for
cared.
A second. But it's like, you laugh, laughing at your own failure takes away any room for anybody else to do so.
It does. And then we sat in it, took a picture.
Like, whatever.
Even when we ran into the girl, remember at that ceramic thing later, I thought for sure she's going to be like, oh, you were that girl. She's like,
yes.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I love it.
Yes.
And I even validated for like that, that whole incident that it wasn't even a thing. Like she didn't even register.
No, and it's never a big deal. So it does not give a fuck if it's embarrassing. That's why I'm always, even with my boyfriend, I'm doing the most stupid shit in public, or I'll just grab his face and start making out with him, because I'm like, the truth is, I'm the main character in my life. These are all NPCs. These are all side characters that I'll never see again. Mm-hmm. And same with you. You're the main character in your life. Kenny's the main character in Kenny's life. Like, that is just what it is. These people are just bots. Like, we're never going to see them again. So to water yourself down, to make yourself more acceptable for other people, if you feel like you have to do that, those aren't your people. Right. Which,
that's a hard one to learn, I think. And that kind of goes into our next one, which is people pleasing. And as long as you're people pleasing, the only person you're not pleasing is yourself. Now, I always say I'm a recovering people pleaser, because most of my life have been that person that I will do whatever I can for someone to my own detriment even. Mm-hmm. And so I know that started early, and we saw that, we were talking to Beckham about it, just even with his job, like taking a new job. Mm-hmm. And and I really wanted to impress upon him, he had a friend recommend him, and I said, yeah, but it's really about what you need to do for yourself. And he was very worried about letting him down. And the amount of times I've done that, where I have either not participated in something or did participate because I was worried about somebody else. And that was something that it made me unhappy so many different times. And then we almost get it in that I think we're kind of taught to believe that when we put ourselves first, that's really selfish. Mm-hmm. And but I do have friends that do that. And I was that person that's like, oh God, they're so selfish. And it's like, it's taken me a while to realize that they're just doing what's right for them. Yes. It actually has nothing to do with me
at all. And showing up for yourself is never selfish.
No, but it's a hard thing to be able to say, like, no, I need to do this for me. Yeah. Well, what else do you have going on? Just, even if it's plans, even committing to plans. I mean, I've been in that situation where, and I didn't have anything else going on. I just needed to not be there for myself and for my peace of mind. But the guilt that came along with that. And I don't know if that's just being raised Catholic, I'll be honest, because that stuff is like, sets in early, but
no, I think
it's hard.
Big part of it too is
like you
being
feel obligated.
A woman too. You just feel this
I think that's
pressure
a big
to
part
say
of it.
yes to things that don't always serve you, and because again, you're more concerned with how others are going to perceive you, or if you don't say yes or show up to something. But that also goes back to the first one. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. And if they do, and if they're going to hang that over your head, that's not your person.
They're not your people.
They're not your people. The fourth one is people who have more control of an older version of you will not support your growth. And what I mean by
I love this one.
Because even as I was typing this and my mom and I were sitting at our table talking, she asked me to explain it. And what I mean by this is as you are growing and trying to change who you are for the better, whether that's new physical habits, new mental habits, just a new overall lifestyle, you're not always going to get the support that you are looking for or expecting, or even the support that you pour into your people.
No.
And the reason that is because people who are comfortable with this old version, this stuck version of you, they're not going to be okay with you growing and changing and setting new boundaries, because it
threatens theirs.
It does 100%.
And this is one I think I really wish, because I know that I modified and adjusted aspects of my life and just the direction, even the whole direction of my life, because of, I think I even told you this at one point. I was pretty committed to becoming a police officer.
Yes.
And I mean, I was studying for the test. I mean, it was literally all I wanted to do. And there was a point in my life where that didn't work for somebody, and I changed the whole direction of my life because of it. And looking back now, that's just something that if you understand that concept, I mean, the ways that will serve you, I mean, I can't explain how important that is.
And that also goes back to people pleasing.
Yeah.
Listener, we are building these tips brick by brick, but it's true. You have to, if you are comfortable where you are at, then stay where you're at. But the truth is, growth happens when you're uncomfortable, and it's painful, but it's also a lot more painful staying the same and staying
That's true.
Stagnant.
It might sound kind of cliche, but it is true, because that's where real unhappiness comes in.
It is.
I love this one because this is one I have lived by.
Yes, you have.
Ask for it. The worst they'll say is no. Don't ever hesitate about someone's response. So I was really good at this in my 20s, mostly out of necessity. It wasn't because I was like, oh, I'm just so brave. I was often in a position that I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I had to fucking ask for it.
Yeah.
And so it usually worked out, whether it was a job or to spend time with someone, and I found almost every single time I actually asked, whoever I was asking was receptive. And that's the craziest part. I mean, we're just talking to a friend of yours, and it was having to do with work as well. And she was so afraid to ask. And to me, like, she was going to end up in the same position she was already in.
Either way.
Yeah.
I agree.
So by asking, it really, all it could have done is actually just given her what she wanted.
Yeah.
That was hard to watch, because I saw really, she was giving up on something that was really important to her. And that was really hard. And I don't, I think you've done a pretty good job of that, but don't ever lose that.
I've done I think you're very good at it. You're very good at asking. Like my mom in her early 20s, like she'll tell me these stories of how, even I think of when you're working at the Cheesecake Factory in your 20s. And I mean, I was a single mom. I needed health benefits. And I had just started there. Yeah.
And the regional manager was sitting in the restaurant that I just got hired at. And a friend of mine calls me and said, he's sitting in the restaurant, he's doing work. And so I got dressed and I went and I asked him for his time. And I sat at his table and I basically said, I need to be promoted. I need to move into management. You know, I want to go into corporate. And he looked at me like, you've literally been here 2 hours. Like, what are you thinking? Yeah. And he was pretty firm. I don't want to say harsh because I actually really like this person and I respect him a lot. But, you know, I had that conversation with him, and actually it was really soon after I did get promoted. And everyone in the restaurant, again, speculated how that came to pass. Like, why would he, you know, everyone has an opinion when things like that happen. Did you do something else to leverage this? But after I worked there a while, he pulled me aside and he explained it to me. And he said, the second you sat down that day, I decided. And I said, wow, you really made me sweat though. You know, I actually thought I was going to get fired. And he said, anyone that comes and I came pretty prepared that day, but anyone that, you know, has the character to come and sit down and ask the way you did and present your case the way you did, like you deserve to be in the position you were in. Yeah. And that has always resonated because I'll tell you that day, the fear that was inside, it took everything in me, but it was like a do or die. But like I had to do it.
You're so good at it. You are so good at it. And even then he says, no, it's not embarrassing if you own it. Like, what are people going to say? They're going to judge you now because you're trying to.
I would have just gone back to just working the job I was already working. It wouldn't have changed anything.
Exactly. And that also leads us into our next one. And rejection isn't rejection. It's just redirection. And that is something that I have learned within this last year. It does not make sense in the moment. Like at all. It doesn't. It's not clear. And I think that it seems like rejection because our egos are hurt. But the truth is, it is, I mean, even think of where we are at now. Every other little moment has led us to this giant moment, even starting this podcast and doing things that fill our buckets. And within this past year, I have just grown even closer to God. And I think that has helped me realize that it's not rejection, it's redirection. And there is a much bigger plan. And whether you believe in God or the universe or just a higher authority, I think it helps to have faith in knowing that there is a large purpose for you and that you matter. And that I think your example is
your job. Because remember?
Yes, even my job. So I applied to where I work now at the spin studio right before I had hip surgery. Little did I know I was having hip surgery. I did not know up at that point. And I remember I did not get hired, and it was devastating because I have been going there since I was 13. Yep. I've been going there for 10 years. So when I did not get it, it was crushing, and I was so sad, and it was such a big part of my world and my routine, and it just honestly felt like end all be all. And that's because it's a community too.
That's like there's so much more to that than just spinning. So it's.
But I had hip surgery, and obviously I had that horrible accident after, and I was out of commission for a very long time. And even then, it's like right before, I had no idea why none of this worked out in the way that it was supposed to. Flash forward, I ended up getting hired, but it's like every little thing serves its purpose. And that's, I don't know, listener, if you believe in God or if you believe in any sort of higher authority, but we see things from a linear perspective. We only see things directly as they are in front of us. That higher authority sees things from an aerial view. So what we can't understand, it's not our job to understand.
No, and it was also, I think you were wearing around the right people at the right time. So even if it would have worked out, I think it would have gone up in flames because you had people around you that just didn't want to see you be in an environment like that. Which kind of goes right into our next one also, which is invest in your mental and physical health. Now, as someone, how I already mentioned, I partied a lot in my 20s. Okay. And you know, even talking about that is one of the ways that, nobody cares. I need to focus on and not be worried about the perception of me sharing that. But I partied a lot, and I am playing a lot of catch up right now. And when I say a lot of catch up, from inside and out, the amount of things I have to do to make up for the damage that was done, honestly, it's crazy. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And it just, again, it played such a factor in my happiness that I didn't realize that I wish I would have had a little more knowledge about that or a little more perspective. But I think everyone was kind of doing what I did, so I didn't really know any better. But you do know better.
Yes.
And that's, again, something that you being able to understand that, I mean, on top of being able to save yourself so much money fixing it later, but it's just your general happiness on a day-to-day basis. Like,
yes.
recovering from partying and that, and even trying to function like that as a human. Like, I look back at the time I even just hung over, I'll be honest, the amount of days that it would take me to just recover and keep going. And then I was like, well, if I just keep drinking, then I don't have to worry about recovering.
If you're always drunk, you can't be hungover.
And it's kind of crazy, like the impact that really made it just in being happy.
I will say too, my whole perspective changed once I started to work out and eat healthier as a way of showing up for myself. And that is an act of self-love, and confidence is instilled when you show up for yourself, when you make promises to yourself. So if you tell yourself, I'm going to go to the gym every day at 5 a.m. and you start to go to the gym every day at 5 a.m., you are going to be more confident in yourself because you are completing and acting on things that you said you would. And investing in your mental health and your physical health, I really do believe they go hand in hand. And that could also be Botox and
whatever.
Like,
I didn't get it back
then.
then.
Good.
Like, I didn't start running till my 30s, and then I would realize I'd run and run and run, and I'd cry when I'd run, and I was like, wow, I'm actually holding it. If I had learned that in my 20s, I mean, I don't even know how well that could have served me.
Yeah.
I just would, like I said, I would probably drink instead.
Our next tip, listener, is this is very much so for me, is just to be patient in relationships. And I think it is really important, and this is the first relationship I'm in that I just am moving very intentionally, and versus like, oh my, I know it sounds like that. I'm still head over heels for my boyfriend, but in a very healthy way. It's not like, oh, I'm seeing all these red flags and I'm ignoring them. I think you have to be patient in relationships, both romantic and platonic. And
I was not that.
No.
I was 75 and a 35 all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's normal because you get love bombed and you're like, well, duh, why would you not love me? But people are a sum of who they surround themselves with. That being said, surround yourself with their friends. If their friends are going out every weekend and doing shady shit that you don't agree with, birds of a feather.
Right.
Like, they're not just going to see that and be like, oh, shame. No, I'm sure they're participating to some extent.
Yeah.
And even with friends, be patient. I think with girls, it's really easy to grasp onto other female friendships because, like I said, in your 20s, it's kind of this second puberty where you're navigating things for the first time on your own with a lot more freedom.
And friendships is a hard one.
So you grip onto friendships that don't always serve you because you power in numbers. You're trying to do this whole thing called life with a support system. Right. And then that's also where girls will sabotage each other. And you just have to be patient. And the right people will be okay with you being patient.
Well, and this is where so many of these ideas are intertwined, because if you're doing some of these, like the mental and health, that's where you force patience. You can't spend 24 hours together because you've got your routine. Or you can force that time, but we're so quick to like forfeit it and be like, I don't care. I don't need to do that anymore. And I did that a lot.
No, because I think too, in every relationship, you have to show up for yourself first, because you cannot properly give all of who you are to another person, to support them, to love them, to show up for them in the ways that they need if you're not showing up for yourselves.
And this is Oh gosh, this is really good. Date the person, not the potential. So you were just talking about, if let's say you're dating someone who goes out with his friends every week and he parties, and you're always probably thinking, a lot of girls are thinking, oh, but I know when we get together, they'll stop doing that.
No.
And it's like they are who they are already.
Yeah.
Like, be real about that.
Take people for who they are.
Yeah. When they
if
show
they're
you, pay
showing
attention.
You,
Yeah.
Exactly. When they're showing you, pay attention. Do not hang your hat on words or things that they say they will do or change. If they are showing you who they are, pay attention.
Yeah. And that's a tough one for sure.
The next is the word no. The word no is so powerful, and it's also a full sentence. No is a full sentence. I feel like sometimes we feel this pressure to have to
explain,
follow it up with something else. Yes, with an explanation, but you don't. Like, you don't also have to engage in every conversation someone invites you into.
I laugh because that's hard for me.
It is hard.
Yeah.
Like, you can just say no. You can walk away. If it does not serve you, nobody cares. Like I said, you are the main character in your life.
Yeah, I can't sometimes go 3 floors in an elevator without practically exchanging phone numbers.
Yeah. That's different. That's like a positive, fun.
Yeah, but still, even the no part, I definitely always feel compelled to go the extra step. And you always, I don't say always, but you often get frustrated. You're like, why did you need to do that?
You don't need to tell, like, just say no and move on.
But that's part of this, again, goes to the people pleasing. Like, I feel this need to kind of justify or explain. And make sure,
like, are you okay?
Yeah, are you okay? Yeah.
But it's
Pulse
like,
check.
is Anna okay? Listener, are you okay? Just say no. I love the word no.
You do. You've gotten pretty good at it.
I'm very good at it.
Just don't use it on me.
I never do. Come on. This one is my favorite. These last 3, we are ending very strong because these are very powerful. But Mel Robbins is a motivational speaker. If you don't know who she is, look her up. She's so smart. I love everything that she does. She's very intentional with her work, and she just speaks in a way that is very easy to comprehend, and
just real.
It's just a lot of what a lot of people need to hear.
Yeah.
And she has this concept called the let them theory. And the way that she explains it is, if you have friends that are not inviting you out to go do things and they're leaving you out, let them. If you have a partner that is acting shady, let them. And let me clarify, in a way that do not try to change people's behavior. Let them show you who they are. Let them act in a way that they want to. That being said, too, when they show you and act and treat you a certain way, create distance.
Like, you decide what you need accordingly.
Yes. I remember I had a friend that was in a horrible relation. Like, everyone knew she was in this horrible relationship. And I feel like as a girl, when you see your friends in a horrible relationship, you're very quick to want to respond and help them or tell them what they need. Right. And the truth is, I was listening to Mel's podcast about the let them theory when I was also experiencing this, and I pulled back because I'm like, this is her life. If she is okay with the relationship that she's in, that's where I have to, like, okay, I'm just going to let her.
It's hard to do.
It is very hard to do. And granted, take that with a grain of salt too, because if you know someone that, like, if they're in a situation that is harming them or putting their life in danger, don't let them, like, you have to gauge also.
Right.
But she was in a situation where she was just okay with the way that she was being treated and the way that this person was not showing up for her. And instead of me telling her what she should do or block him or never speak to this man again, I was like, she has to figure this out for herself, because the truth is, anything I say, she's just going to resent me.
True.
Like, you let people do what people want to do.
Even in our family dynamic, like, I want to just be the one to make something happen sometimes, and just trying to let it happen so that you guys can see how certain truths are,
like, revealed. And
it's really hard.
It is very hard. And it's something that I try to practice, and that also just goes with everything else we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Like, how people treat you is how they think of you. And that's okay, let them act that way, but also do not allow people like that access to you in your life.
I love that one. And this is just kind of a more broad idea, and I've struggled with this so many times. You don't need everything to start, whether it's, like we said, this podcast, or whether it's, you
going to the beach, working out.
Yeah, anything you're trying to embark on or endeavor. I think so many of us are like, well, I need the right equipment. I need the right outfits. I need this. And then it's like we wait to start instead of just start. I mean, it's once you just start, things will evolve. And I think that is something that I've always struggled with. And I refrained from doing things that I really wanted to do or accomplish. Because I felt like I wasn't ready. I didn't have all the tools, or I didn't have, oh my gosh, I wanted to start this page, or, and I don't have everything ready, and I need the right lighting, and I need the right, and I had a friend of mine, she was really trying to go down this like professional fitness. Oh, but I need the right this and the right supplements and and I was like, just fucking start. Just
do it.
Go out the front door and start fucking running. Like,
I've also been that person where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to work out, I think a lot of people actually share this idea, but like you want to look a certain way before you go to a public gym or a workout class or anything. But it's like, even that, just fucking go.
Yeah.
Just do these things. Like, it does not have to make sense in the moment. Nothing needs to be lined up so perfect for you to act on things.
Because as you start, honestly, other like opportunities to help whatever it is you're trying to achieve will present. And that's something, again, learning much later. I was like, wow, if I'd known that, I would have just done started so many things.
Yes.
And that is a huge part of this last one, which is you can be afraid, but fucking do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
Like, I'm not saying don't be afraid. Like, the amount of times I was afraid to do something and just didn't because of fear that probably wasn't valid, I'll be honest, most of the time. And learning that more recently to just fucking do it anyway is such a powerful thing. And even the adrenaline, the excitement that comes from doing it afraid anyway is huge. I mean, that's its own like experience.
I think that even comes from like an idea of self-doubt, and you try and talk yourself out of, well, why do I deserve, and maybe I'm not good enough. And even like going back to school, I've experienced this. And the thing is, if I give it my all and whatever happens, as long as I'm putting in the work, I'm allowed to be afraid. But maybe some things aren't always meant to work out, but if I'm putting energy and effort into it, chances are it's gonna work out.
It's gonna work.
And if it makes me happy, and if it's something that is so heavy on my heart that I feel inclined to participate in, then fucking like do it. I was thinking about that on my drive to work. I was so scared like about school, and I'm like, what if it doesn't work out? And I'm like, no bitch, but what if it does work out?
Well, and that was,
I think that's what we're more afraid of, is what if it does work out? Then what?
Then what, right? We're more afraid of what we are actually capable of, maybe.
Yes.
And I think this last one, I feel like incorporates all of them.
Yeah.
Because it's like, be afraid, ask anyway, and be afraid and
set boundaries.
I mean,
grow,
it's
change.
Just, it's all of them.
Yes.
And it's like, even with my work, you know, when it comes to real estate, you know, whether you're doing a condo or like a $7 million house, you know, it's one of those things where even the intimidation, you're dealing with a whole different type of client. And it's like the fear and everything that can come over me and the expectation. And the reality was, when I just stayed consistent with the person I am and how I behave, like, yeah, was I afraid? Sure. But doing it anyway just taught me, it was like, you know what? It didn't matter so much. It was me that they were hiring.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just getting past that. It was like a huge kind of eye-opening experience of, it's my character. It's my, you know, how I navigate this. That's what they're, you know, I was afraid for nothing. I was so consumed with this idea and this number. And it was like, for what?
For what?
You know, I had the knowledge and I was able to do it. It was just kind of getting out of my own head.
I think it's so helpful to talk about this. And it's just things that should serve as constant reminders. And yes, a lot of them you could hear or read on a piece of paper and be like, well, and you do have to put into practice and you do have to consciously think about it and talk about it. And listener, we just hope that you took just as much out of this topic as we did. And it is really important, and you have to show up for yourself every day. You are the main character in your life, and you deserve nothing but love, and show up for yourself before you show up for other people.
Oh, I love this.
I love you.
This is a good one.
This is a good one. I just feel so good about this.
Well, and we could talk about it forever, and that's the part.
And I mean, we could make.
Might forget this in
more.
like a few weeks, and that's the whole point. Once you start talking about it, you realize like all the different ways that you've kind of fallen short for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I love talking about this. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, listener, for joining us. We will talk to you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening to the I Did It First podcast. Bye.
Bye.